at Augusta about his experiences as a prisoner of war during the Second World War. Ron having been a member of the 2nd 6th Field Park Company, an engineer unit. Ron, thank you very much for agreeing to do this interview. Could I start by asking you when did you enlist and what motivated you to enlist?
Well, everyone else was joining up and I went up to Perth to try to join the Air Force, and they told me to come back in 2 years' time. I went round the corner, I knew someone who knew someone in the recruiting depot down Bazaar Terrace. He gave us some forms to fill in. We went up to a little restaurant, sat down, filled in the forms and went down there, and he said get on the end of the queue, and we finished up enlisting with a crowd from Kalgoorlie.
Now the date of your enlistment, on what I could see, is the 13th of July 1940. What age were you?
I was supposed to be 21, wasn't I? No, 18.
Okay, well that was the question I had in my mind, because it does say here that you were born in April 1919.
No, I put my age up.
Okay.
Yeah, I put my age up, yeah.
Now, where did you undertake your first training? Your initial training?
Naval Base. We were recruited and went into Claremont. That's where we were issued with our gear and that, and we went from there down to Naval Base Camp. And from Naval Base Camp up to 3rd RTD Northern Training Camp.
So at that stage had you been corps allocated? Were you allocated to a unit?
No, but from up there in Northern I was allocated then to the machine gunners, and that's when I transferred out of them then.
And what motivated you to get out of the...
Well, it's a bit embarrassing with my father being the the officer in charge of our platoon, apart from the fact that I heard the engineers were going away very soon.
Yes.
And I had a chance of getting into them, so I transferred to them. And we both finished up in the same place. So.
Right, so if we can move forward now, and at some stage you were moved from Australia. Did you know that you were being sent to Singapore?
Not until we got on the boat. About 2 days out, we were told.
And was that out of Fremantle or out of where?
Yeah, out from Fremantle. Yeah, on the no, I forget the name of the boat now. Yeah.
Were you being escorted? Was it the vessel on its own? Or?
Yeah, no, it was on its own then, but the Sydney met up with us up the track a bit.
Yes.
And the Sydney left us this side of the Sunda Straits. And I can still see her. She did a big circle right round and she heeled over like that. Did a big circle. They were all standing to attention on the deck, and then off she went south and we went. And I think there were 2 Dutch corvettes took over and escorted us in through the Straits.
Right. Yeah. And you went right into Keppel Harbour, did you?
Yeah,
unloaded there.
Yeah, took us into Keppel Harbour.
Now from there, where was the unit deployed?
Johor Bahru, just across the causeway. And that's where we were camped.
Yes.
The whole time we were in Singapore.
And so this
did our training from there.
This is in the middle of 1941, possibly?
Have to be, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And we were there, I think I told you before, for nearly 12 months we'd been there when the Japs come to the war.
Yes. Yeah.
And we had our base, our dumps all up along the coast at Johor Bahru and Kota Bahru, that's where the Japs landed. We had dumps all up along there.
So that Johor Bahru and Kota Bahru are on the east coast. Were there any dumps on the west coast?
No. Well, there could have been, but we didn't. We had ours mainly on the east coast, right up there.
Now, were you aware that the Japs had invaded on the 7th or 8th of December 1941?
Yes, there must have been something going on because we were out on bivouac in a rubber plantation, and we heard the planes coming over, and then the ack opening up, and we could see the planes and the searchlights. That's the first night they bombed Singapore. And I believe there's a big party going on in Singapore. The party never even stopped. I reckon it kept going.
Yes.
Yeah, because in this rubber plantation too, because the planes come over us, and as they were coming over, they were being shot at, we could hear the shrapnel and stuff falling down through the plantation, through the trees.
Yes. Yeah. Now, during that 70 days from the time the Japs landed to the time that Singapore capitulated, did you work with the British engineers on any of the demolitions?
No.
Did you do any demolitions yourself?
No, not my part. I was in transport.
Yes.
We carted all the stuff for bridging equipment and mines and ammunition and all that. We carted that.
Yeah.
All we did was cart the stores and that.
Yeah. Now I understand that you were one of the last units to cross the causeway before it was blown.
We probably didn't realise we were one of the last, except we were told to hurry up and get across. And next thing we heard, near Kotatingi, I think it was, we were in a rubber plantation dispersed there when someone said, oh, the causeway's been blown.
Yes.
So that was, I think it was only the day after it had been blown. They said it's been blown anyway, but we had been told when we were coming down with our trucks.
Yes.
Yeah, to get across quickly.
Yeah. The Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders claim to have been the last people across.
Quite possibly too. I couldn't argue about that. I couldn't argue about that.
Yeah, but I do understand that 2 Australian ambulances came over after them, so that's destroyed their story, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you are now a prisoner of war, and I think that around May 1942 you were moved to Burma.
Yeah.
Was there any option? Did you volunteer for that?
No, didn't have any chance of volunteering.
No.
The only chance we had of volunteering was once we got into the line, when they wanted half a dozen men to go somewhere. And there's always someone who volunteer, and they volunteered.
Yeah.
When 1 or 2 of the parties never come back, no one ever volunteered after that, so they just picked out. The Japs had come along and say, whoosh, 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 you know, yeah.
So what was your route from Singapore to get into Burma?
Singapore, straight onto the Toyahassi Maru, and the other boat was the Tattoo Maru. She was loaded up with POWs too. I forget how many there was. That was called A-Force, and I think I told you before, we went up to Victoria Point first. They had us filling in bomb craters and that on the aerodrome, so the Japs could use that. And then some stayed behind, and they took the rest of us. I think it was on a different tramp steamer. We called into across the road where all the trouble is now, with Madang, northern Sumatra. Remember calling in there. Just stopped there. They took on some extra Jap guards, I think, there. Then from there we went to Tavoy, put some more POWs off there, then come out of Tavoy and up to Yi. That's where we were landed, at Yi.
How long were you there?
I don't know for sure. I'd say a couple of weeks, that was all. And that's, they had old garrison Japs there in charge, and they were the only Japs that looked like being a bit human. They weren't bad. They weren't vicious guards, those Japs there at Yi. Matter of fact, they even let us go down to the village with a Jap guard.
Now I think from my reading there were quite a number of Australian doctors there. Would you have been aware of them, or weren't you near the hospital facility?
No. What hospital facility?
Well, they did have something.
Yeah,
but,
I know, yeah.
But if they had to do anything, they
like
went and used the civilian facilities.
Oh, at Yi, did they? Didn't know anything about that, no. As
No,
I said, even
no,
though we had doctors,
Yeah.
even though we had doctors, you never said, well, you know, like there's a Dr. White with a limp.
No.
You remember him because of that.
Yeah.
He was my doctor in that camp. Any doctor that come along, and you wouldn't know them half the time.
Yes. I'm glad you mentioned Hoppy White.
Yes, that's right.
But I did mislead you last time, because when I referred to the number of doctors, it was really at Tavoy and not at Yei.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
well,
so
we didn't stay at Tavoy.
No.
Yeah.
Hoppy White is a doctor who's of interest to me. I think his name was Alex, and he was a Tasmanian. But do you know anything about him? Because he's one of these people that just seems to have disappeared. No one knows much about him.
I think why he stuck in my mind is because we used to call him Hoppy.
Yes.
You know, Dr. White, oh, that's the one that had a limp.
Yes.
And probably never saw him more than half a dozen times.
Yeah.
And that wasn't in the one camp.
No.
Might be in this camp and you'd see him, you'd be to 2 or 3 other camps, and then you strike another camp and he's there in that one too.
Yes.
The same with a lot of the doctors.
Yes.
That's how you met up with them. You never had a regular doctor.
No. Now from Yale